I started just attracting a lot of people into my world that thought like me. I had my focus so hard on growing and getting in rooms with people that thought bigger than me. Like that was one of my big focuses when I first got started. The longer that you sit in those emotions, the longer it controls you. And so you're in control of the outcomes of your life. I'm a really big believer in taking intentional action, meaning that you're not attached to your goals, but you're moving towards it with intention every single day.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Walk to Wealth podcast. If you're tuning in on YouTube or any of the podcast directories, make sure to do yourself one teeny tiny little favor. Make sure to give us a follow because I don't want you to miss out on any of the amazing people I'm bringing on this year. Without further ado, let's get right into this one. Katie, for anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to get to know you yet, to get to meet you, tell us your elevator pitch. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, no, I'm so happy to be here with you all. So I started off in sales trainer, but I transitioned to helping aspiring coaches build and launch their own coaching program. So that is what I do right now. And it's been amazing. I absolutely love it.
That's exciting. So Katie, take us back to the time machine. I was very fortunate to hear your story. So for anyone that doesn't know, I met Katie at A2B which is my friend Brandon Doris' conference, but I hopped on the podcast a couple of times already. And Katie was one of the speakers there, and I got to meet her. And I got to hear a little bit about your story, but for the audience who hasn't gotten to meet you yet, take us back in a time machine. What was it like growing up? How did that play into who you are today? What was it like?
Yeah, so growing up, so I'm going to take you back to 10-year-old Katie Shea. I was like the new kid in school, and Abercrombie and Fitch. That was the thing back then. Wearing Abercrombie and Fitch shirts, you had to have the moose and everything, and fit into like the popular kids, right? So I was a new kid in school, and I was just trying to fit in with everybody. And I remember sitting in math class, which was the class that I just could not figure out. Like we all have those subjects that we just could not figure out, and math was that subject for me. And my teacher came up to me after the class, and he said that he had called my mom. And so he had a conversation with my mom, and they decided that I had a learning disability. And so they wanted to run all these different tests on me and all these different things because I was just not moving forward in that class. And so next thing you know, I put into like this small classroom, shoved into the back of the hallway where nobody wanted to be, and I was sitting there, the bell would go off, and I would be the first person in the hallway because I didn't want to be found out that I was that little girl with a learning disability. And so fast forward to today and in my business today, I didn't know that little girl was still running the show in the back of me. The little girl with a learning disability that didn't deserve to be in big classrooms and didn't deserve success in her life because she's always told that that's where I was meant to be. And so, that little girl continued to run the show in my life for years, until I became aware of it. And so I teach this one thing, and John, I talked about this at the conference, was, the worst thing that you could do is ignore somebody, yet we ignore ourselves our whole entire lives without even realizing it. And so if you want new things to happen in your lives, if you want to make new changes, well, you got to become aware of what's even there first.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like one of the things in some way, shape or form, most of the entrepreneurs that I've spoken to and most of the people in this space have been mislabeled or miscategorized or shoved into boxes that they weren't supposed to be in or thrive in. Because the majority of people just don't understand that what we go through as entrepreneurs. And it's one of those things like as a kid that shows like entrepreneurial qualities, like people like with ADHD or ADD. A lot of these business like moguls have like some type of like learning disability or some type of disability. And it's like as a kid, it shows up. And as you said, you feel like the odd kid or the odd one out because you're in the little classroom and stuff like that. But it's like in the business world, a lot of those traits that made you different actually help you thrive and flourish in this world from what I found just from talking to so many people. It makes me think about, you mentioned too, that a lot of the times we're ignoring ourselves. I realized from just talking to so many people, it's just like, there's three, I guess, main buckets of people, or 3 or 4, I guess you could say. There's bucket one is the people who are kind of like born as like entrepreneurs, right? And they're kind of born like this. They had the traits for it. And then they were also fostered up in a home where it's like that was actually praised. It's like they kind of just stuck with it all their lives, right? Then I feel like what the majority of entrepreneurs are kind of in the same buckets that we're in, is that we're born entrepreneurs, right? but then we lose it along the way for some reason, shape or form, whatever. Maybe your parents, might be them putting you in the little classroom, whatever it may be. And then we pick it back up later on in life. And then there's people who are born entrepreneurs and then they lose it somewhere along the way. And then they never, ever pick it back up. And as kids, I feel like we're all limitless. We have no bounds. We have this crazy imagination. And then majority of us lose it. Only a small percentage of us actually ever find it or get to keep it for the rest of our lives. And so it's like, you were able to find it. What was the thing? For me, it was Rich Dad Poor Dad that kind of brought me back. But what for you was the thing that kind of brought you back into this world, brought you back into using the little kid in you, unlocking the inner kid, and instead of hiding it and disowning it?
It's such a good question. And I love that question because it was a journey for me to find that out. I came from the roofing sales. Roofing sales is where I started out. And I hated it because I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. I always wanted to be an elementary school teacher. And that didn't happen because I couldn't get into the school. And so I had to figure out something else. And so I ended up in roofing sales and, I sucked at it for so long. I would drive up to these roofing companies just to look at them because I was terrified of this thing called rejection. And I would drive away, right? And I kept on getting rejected. But then that's where I found Grant Cardone. But the cool thing about to answer your question is, how did I unlock this inner child? I became really good at sales that year. I went from failing at it to closing over $1 million in honestly just a couple of months because I immersed myself into the world of sales and got uncomfortable, right? But what the key thing was to unlocking that inner child was when I started sales training people, I noticed that I really got drawn to helping people unlock their belief systems and helping people believe in themselves more than anybody else, right? And going into the psychology of things. And I was like, why the heck am I getting so drawn to this? And so I had to do a lot of the work on myself. And that came from my coach, my mentor, Richard Dolan, who worked with Tony Robbins for a really, really long time, got trained by him. So that's when my whole journey into the psychology of myself and my inner child really started to get unlocked. And I realized I wasn't attached to sales. I was attached to getting that little girl to get uncomfortable and prove everyone else wrong.
I think one of the hardest things about working on yourself is not actually working on yourself, but preparing yourself to work on yourself, preparing yourself to lift the rug, to, move the curtain, to see what's been hiding all along. So what do you do leading up to before you actually started working on yourself? How do you get into the right headspace? Because if you're not in the right state of mind, if you're not, and this is not therapy or anything at all, I don't mean by that, right state of mind. I just mean when you were getting ready to start, working on yourself or get ready with working with your coach, what did you do leading up to that? What were the steps leading up to that so that when your coach did come into your life, you were ready to receive that information and be receptive and not push it away? Because a lot of times the defense that we build up to protect us in our earlier years ends up being the fence that cages us in from growth in our later years. It's what did you do leading up to working with your coach so that you could be in a state of mind to even be receptive of this stuff to start working on yourself?
So it kind of goes back to when I was in roofing sales and when I was driving up to these companies, and I had no mindset to say, I could make $1 million and I could do this and I could do that. I had none of that because I didn't come from it. So I came from a single mom that worked so hard. My dad owned his own business. So there's a lot of those belief systems that were still instilled inside me that I didn't realize. But the one thing that altered it was when I started listening to people that thought bigger than me. And that was Grant Cardone at the time. And I was immersing myself in the conversation of just being surrounded by him, right? I would be on Cardone University and I would connect to people that were thinking higher than me. And all of a sudden I started shifting, and from this girl, I was oh my gosh, I could make, $30,000 and I'm so happy, to, oh my gosh, I can make millions of dollars. How the heck do I do that? Mm-hmm. It was a total mindset shift, but that was because I was getting in rooms with people that thought bigger than me and that were playing bigger than me. And so that was the start of my journey, and that kind of snowballed from there.
one of the people I interviewed, she said, you want to play a good game, you got to get a good team, right? A lot of the time, like, you can work on yourself, of course, and that'll take you up so far, but you got to get the people around you to be good as well. You want to play a good game, you got to get those stars around you, hitters around you, like I like to say, that are doing bigger than you and more than you, because it makes you realize that we could actually be doing a lot more. But let me ask you then, because that could also lead you down a very dangerous road. It's like, all right, it's never enough because there's always someone doing more than me. There's always another goalpost. It's like, how do you balance off like talking to these people and being inspired, but also not beat yourself up because you're not doing enough? Like, it's a very like kind of weird gray area to kind of navigate. So how do you navigate?
Yeah. So that is something that I struggled with for a very long time, because I was in the game of you must be doing X or else you're a failure, right? And the reality is that business and life, like it's a roller coaster. You almost have to learn how to embrace every part of the journey. And so for me, it was more recently than in the past, but I had to figure out like how to detach from what that success was, if that makes sense. So if I had a goal of making X amount, I had to be inspired by it, but not be attached to it. Because once you're attached to it, then you almost tie your identity into it. And once you tie your identity into it and you don't do it, then you're going to go really far down. And you're going to feel disappointed. You're going to feel like this sense of like failure and all those different things. So I'm a really big believer in taking intentional action, meaning that you're not attached to your goals, but you're moving towards it with intention every single day. Right. But that was something that I struggled with for a very long time, like a really, really long time. It's just, I had to learn how to navigate its perspective.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. And having intention-based goals instead of like action or like merit-based goals, because intention is, for the most part, all that matters. For example, like sales, it could be helpful or it could be manipulation. The only thing that pretty much separates the two is your intention, right? It's like, if you want to do harm for somebody, then it's deception and manipulation. But if you're genuinely trying to help somebody else, it's like, we're actually doing them a favor by helping them buy whatever, the product or service is. And intention is something that doesn't really get talked about much. So let's kind of dive deeper into it. It's like, how does one start really setting intention-based goals? Because it's something that's like, we always hear SMART goals. We hear, you have to have a definite thing and you have to track it and, reverse engineer how do you get there and stuff. But like, how do you set intention-based goals so that we can kind of shift our perspective on how you view success?
Yeah. So intention-based goals is something that, because I came from the Grant Cardone world. So it was always like, set your target, do this, do that. And, it's great. Like it's one of those things that you need. Right. And it really does progress you forward, because when you have something that is like a target and a number, and that like all the steps to go like to get there, it's a definite thing that you need. However, I kept on finding myself hitting this wall of, how you said, like almost putting myself down for not doing it. And so I came to this thing called intention-based goals, which is something more of the lines of having a goal, again, but not being attached to it. But how you set those goals is, I'm a very big believer in like visualization, because I love the psychology and the neuroscience behind everything. So I'm a really big believer in like visualization, and I'll show you. Okay, I have a check that I wrote out to me about a week ago for a goal that I set that excites the heck out of me. But I put the check on my desk every single day, right? So my intention is to get that money, to go out there and figure out how to make that money. But my attachment to it is not, it's just not existent. And so I set out things like, hey, what do I need to do? How can I get really resourceful and creative to go out there and make this money? But it's not saying, okay, like I need to do like X amount of this, I do this, because it's just this, it doesn't, I'm not in a flow state at that point. I'm just like a hamster wheel, just rolling and getting things done. So I don't know if that answered your question. I know I kind of went off on that, but I like to do a lot of visualization and then understanding, what are the steps that I need to do in order to get there, and break it up, like that's how I do my intention-based goals. I don't know if that's how everyone does it, but that's how I do it.
But that's genius because you found something that works for you. And you remind me of, there's this one law that's called the law of detachment. And I think it's like Buddhist or like Taoist or some Eastern, and those Eastern philosophy people, they got all the genius stuff, I swear. That's one of those Eastern philosophy teaching, and pretty much what it is, it's pretty much detaching yourself from the whatever the outcome is. And the people who have the most are the people who need it the less. Like all the people who are the wealthiest don't need money, but somehow money still keeps on finding them. All the people in high school that have, all the girls, the popular guys, most of the time it's like they could care less, but they still get all the attention. Usually it's all the people that need it less will always get it more than the people who actually want it and need it, which is such a strange way of life, but that's just kind of life. And when you realize that, the more you can detach yourself, especially in sales as well, because you were in sales, if you can detach yourself from the outcome of sales, is that you have so much more leverage of power over whoever else you're talking to. Because whether they decide to or decide not to, you're fine. And it's also partially like thinking abundantly as well. Because like when you don't need it, you're operating out of abundance because you have all that you need. And so if you have all that you need, and it's all perspective, it's like, well then whatever the outcome is doesn't really matter to you. So you can just focus on showing up and being present instead of worrying about something that hasn't yet happened yet. And there's another law. This one I still haven't really come to terms with grasping yet because it's a little too complicated for me. But it's called the law of non-action, right? My friend actually said this to me on IG. He was and pretty much what the law of non-action is to not take any action that's out of the natural occurrence with things or how things are going. It's like, at first glance, it's like, you want me to not take action? Like, no, take tons of action. Just don't take any action that's out of line. But it's like, it's kind of hard. I'm still trying to figure out how to grasp that one. But I love the fact that you mentioned intention-based goals and visualization. Because it's like, when I'm still just like, it's so much more, I guess, practical to most people. I feel like not everyone's hardwired for numbers and deadlines and standards. And when you set the intention-based goals, you give yourself grace. And you allow yourself to enjoy the journey a bit more than if you were to not hit your numbers. So I kind of want to ask you a bit on this topic. So it's like, those times that you didn't hit your numbers, how did you keep yourself moving forward and not just abandon ship or not put yourself in a slump, right? How do you keep on growing despite not hitting the goals that you originally set out or the intentions you might have originally set out?
So what you focus on is what you're going to get, right? So if you constantly focus on like things of I'm broke, like you have a goal, let's just say that you have a goal to get X amount of, sales to come in, like whatever that goal is, right? Or to lose X amount of weight or whatever it is. And you constantly say like things like, God, I'm so overweight. Or you constantly say things like, I'm so broke, or, like if there's no clients out there and all those different things, well, you're going to attract those same things into your world. And so the power of focus is something that when I get back into a slump, I'm like, hold up, what am I thinking right now? What are the thoughts that I'm thinking? And what are the words that I'm saying? Because those are going to be the actions that I'm taking in every single day of my life. And so I'm constantly going back to auditing what I'm thinking and what I'm saying so that I could go out there and attract things more intentionally. And so that goes back into intentional action, right? Because you're constantly becoming a leader within yourself first, rather than depending on the outside world to give you results. You have to give yourself results and then go out there and make something happen. And so I'm a constant person of focusing on my internal state of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm doing, so that I could go out there and get the external results to match up to that.
Yeah, and that's actually genius. So let me ask you, because I know it's like tons of months and years in the making of you doing the roofing and doing the Grant Cardone stuff. And so and then working with your coach. So once you started working through, on yourself, what was it like in the beginning stages? Once that you started actually working on it, once you started doing the work, once you started making changes, you started seeing some changes, what was it like navigating the world? How was the world changing in front of you? I'll share a quick story before you answer. For me, I still remember the first time I started learning about like reticular activator system, at least like seeing it in my own day-to-day life. I think I might have shared the story on the podcast, but I don't remember. But it's a quick story. It's pretty much, I invested in Tesla, right? That was my first ever investment in the stock market of my own personal money. I had like a couple free Robinhood stocks. And like I invested in Tesla back in like 2021. And this is going to be the 4-1 stock split. And I kid you not, leading up to it, I'd never seen any Teslas in my neighborhood. It was like a rare occurrence for me to see a Tesla. And as soon as I bought my stocks, there's like one in my neighborhood. There was like one every street I turned. And it's like my brain just started realizing everything in front of me. And it's like my whole world started to slightly change. And I was like, this is actually kind of creepy. I didn't do anything different besides put my money in Tesla. And now everywhere I look, like there's Teslas everywhere. So like for you, what was it like with your world when you actually started working on yourself and started doing some improvements on, you know, your internal state? What was it like in the world around you?
Yeah. So kind of like how you said, like the reticular activating system, right? Like when you focus on something, you start seeing it everywhere. Like if you're going to focus on the color blue, oh my gosh, you're going to start seeing blue everywhere. And so I started just attracting a lot of people into my world that thought like me, right? And new coaches, new opportunities, because I started putting my focus on that. For example, the coach that I just told you about, Richard Dolan, he, I have my focus so hard on growing and getting in rooms with people that thought bigger than me. Like that was one of my big focuses when I first got started. And I got in a room with him and he took me underneath his wing, and that's when he trained me. But it was things like that that started happening. Like I started getting in rooms with people that like were bigger, people that were thinking bigger, people that were doing bigger. And it started leveling me up, right? So that reticular activating system, man, oh my gosh, that thing is key.
Yeah, it's one of those things, just like most people don't understand how it works. And like once you realize that, for me, the way I like to describe it's like a heat-seeking missile. And most of the time, the target that you set is set by your subconscious. So a lot of times you're chasing this thing that you don't even know you're chasing until you start looking within. And it's like, oh, I got to point this at something else. It doesn't know good from bad. It just knows find the target, right? So whether your target's good or bad, it's just going to go chase after it. And everything that you see around it is like going to be pretty much whatever that target is. So if you don't have a good target, you're going to be seeing a lot of bad stuff because you probably can't tell the difference between the two. And so let me ask you now, you've worked on yourself a ton and you're speaking everywhere now, like you have a lot of success. So it's like, what's it like now? Do you ever have chinks in the armor? That's the word, right? Or your gaps, I guess. Gaps in the armor.
There you go.
Where you know, someday you just slip up. What was it like on those days when it's like, you know, you kind of like relapse and go back to the negative thinking or the stinking thinking, as people say?
Yeah. I don't stay there anymore that long and here's why. The longer that you sit in those emotions, the longer it controls you. And so you're in control of the outcomes of your life, right? And so I've had to do so much work on myself to the point where, you know, past Katie Shea, if something happened to me where like a gap or I fell down, I would have been like going out to my boyfriend, be like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? Is it my fault? Like all these different things, right? But now when things happen, I look at it in a perspective of, oh my gosh, this is really cool. What can I learn from this? What can I learn from this? And what can I take away from this that is going to empower me? Like I'm a really big believer in everything happens for a reason, even like the worst things sometimes in the world, because there's always something that you could take from it and stack onto it. So I embrace those gaps now. I kind of love the gaps because it has me growing more and learning as a leader.
Yeah, it's one of those things where one of the guys I interviewed said, life doesn't happen to us, it happens as we are. And it's so, everyone says like life happens for you, which is another good one as well. But the life happens as you are thing, it's like, well, you have to kind of now backtrack. Okay, what led up to this? Why? Because, you know, Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL guy, talks about like extreme accountability and extreme ownership. It's almost kind of like that, essentially. It's like, if you don't have accountability, then you're giving up your power to someone else. And if you give up your power to someone else, it's like whether it's your emotions, whether it's a bad friend or your boss, whatever it may be, it's like kind of get in this rut. It's like you lost control of the ship, and then you have to struggle or fight to get it back. And if you realize that if you don't give them the ship to steer in the first place, that you're actually going to be a lot better off. And that doesn't mean the road doesn't get bumpy. There's still going to be bumps in the road or bumps in the ocean, right? And it's like you have to make sure that despite all of them, your ship never gets hijacked by someone else. And you get back into your zone, into your good state, get back into your mojo, whatever it may be, or give yourself some grace to let those emotions go through and then get right back on the horse. Right. So I want to ask you too along this topic. So when it comes to mindset, now you of course helped yourself. You've now helping tons of people with it. What do you see is like the most common mistakes when it comes to like entrepreneurship and people and mindset, like that people have to overcome that they don't expect? Like what are because everyone talks about like, oh, limiting beliefs and stuff, like what are the sleeper picks of like negative mindsets that no one really realizes or talks about, but are usually having some play within people's lives?
Yeah. It's the one that I've noticed like for myself and within my clients, and it kind of goes into like the limiting beliefs and everything, but it's a little bit more specific. If you want to become an entrepreneur, your relationship that you have with money is vital. And that's something that I've had to learn, right? Like I was really good at sales. I was really good at the stuff, but then I didn't feel like I deserved to make more money. And I didn't know that. I had no idea. I was like, what the heck is going on? What's wrong with me? Like, am I okay? Like that little girl with a learning disability now is coming up, right? Like all those different things. And so I had to like shift my focus onto, okay, well, what's my relationship with attracting more money into my life? Because money is a tool. And if you have that money, you could use it to make more of an impact. But my brain and like unconsciously, I didn't even realize that was even controlling me. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's a really big thing.
Yeah, it's one of the things for me. I was just sharing this. I was on that virtual summit and I was literally telling the lady that was interviewing me, I interviewed her on my podcast. And I was telling her, like, for me, I remember when I taught, it was my second social media class and it was a free class. And during the class in the Q&A section, my friend was like, John, like, don't ever do another one of these again without charging. But it was never my intention to turn my classes into a thing that I was charging for. So I just felt so cringy and weird within myself. It's like, I didn't feel okay receiving money despite me putting tons of my own, hard work and effort and time and energy into the things and prepping for it and losing sleep about it. And despite that, I didn't feel worthy of getting anything from it in return. And so it's like, it was something that I didn't even realize was a thing. And then like it started off like, all right, then I did a webinar that I charged like $27 for. And then I did a workshop that was like $200. And then I launched a soft launch my course at $500. That was like a big milestone. I was like, oh, people paying me $500? Oh, shoot. Okay, I got something going. And my course that I'm launching now, I'm literally in the middle of launching it as we're having this interview. I'm charging $1,000 for the course. But had you asked me back last year, it's like that I would be okay with taking money. It's like, not me. Not, this is, something that I was against almost. I had a coach telling me that I should charge. And I was pretty much fighting her on that idea because it didn't feel right. And it's something that I didn't even know was into play until money was offered. And then when money was offered, then I realized that, oh, I actually don't feel worthy of accepting any of this. And so I had to work on myself. And it took a while. It took probably that process took like almost from when I taught my first class to now it's been like 18 months or so. And it's like through that, I've been able to work on myself. And now it's like slowly but surely, now it's like I can confidently say I charge at least, $1,000. And then I'll have a high ticket product that I'll charge even more money and I'll be able to confidently stand behind that. But I kind of worked my way up to it. It's like for me, I wanted to ask you, how did you kind of get over your limiting belief around money and not feeling sort of better? What were the steps that led up to you overcoming that?
Yeah. I mean, when I first started my coaching business, I was charging so low. I would do like, it was group coaching, but it was really one-on-one coaching because I provide so much value. I just want to help everybody. I was spending like $200 a month per person. And I had so many clients but my energy and like, I was just like getting so drained. So my business is going up, but my level of relationship with myself is going down. And so I was like, what the heck is going on? Right. And I had to figure that out. I'm like, why do I feel so bad charging like more than $200 a month for my coaching? Like I'm jumping on one-on-one calls and spending hours with these people. What the heck is going on? So that didn't hit me though. It wasn't at that time where it really hit me. What hit me was the time when I realized that, I quit my job. Yeah, I didn't quit my job in one of those ways where, I made tons of money and then I quit my job. It wasn't like that. I quit my job and thought my business was going to skyrocket. And it did not. And I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, my bank account's starting to go negative. Like, what the heck is going on? And so I knew at that point, because I did so much work on myself, I was like, hold up. It has to be like, what am I thinking right now? Like, what am I thinking? What are the words that I'm saying? And I had to start relating that to money. And so if there's any area in your life that you feel like you're almost disconnected from, it's like you have to immerse into it. And so I started immersing myself into almost like how I did with sales, right? Immersing myself into the world of reading tons of money books, understanding things, understanding like my belief systems around money, how I thought about it, and like all those different things, like how I checked my bank account, right? Because I was terrified to check my bank account all the time. And so I had to like start creating a habit where I was just checking it every single day and like almost treating money as if it was like, you know, my boyfriend or like something that I loved dearly. You know what I mean? Like just treating it with love. And that's when things changed around. That's when I started attracting things to me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, how did this land in my account? Oh my gosh, I got a new client over here because my relationship with money was just shifted and I had a love for it. Right. I wasn't scared of it anymore. Whatever you're scared of, you're going to that's going to be pushed away from you.
That's amazing. So Katie, you dropped a lot of amazing nuggets. You kind of brought the story full circle where we talked about being the kid who, you know, was put in a room where you didn't want to be seen. Right. And so you worked your way through that. And then you kind of worked your way into working on yourself. And then you worked your way through working on yourself. And now you're at a point where you're flourishing, you're thriving, and you continue to work on yourself despite that. Right. We're always in a state of like evolving, of growth, and always working on ourselves, because at the end of the day, we are our biggest investment. We are our biggest asset. And if we lose ourselves, we lose everything. So where can we find you at? I know you work with tons of entrepreneurs. Where can we get more of Katie Shea so that we can continue learning what you have going on and all the new projects that you have up and coming?
Yeah, the best way to just get in touch with me is my Instagram. I love giving my Instagram, number one, because I think it's a platform where you could provide a lot of value on, and you can connect with me personally. So my Instagram handle is Katie_Shea.
All right. And now it's time for our famous 5 questions where we end every single podcast interview. Question number 1, what is the most impactful lesson you've learned in life?
What is the most impactful lesson I learned in life? We kind of already touched on this, but to change perspective and finding power in the bad things that happen to us. I think that has been one of the most powerful and just strongest things that I've learned in life, because when we stay in the stuff, in the bad things, everything around us is just that, right? And so I've had to learn how to shift perspective and find the meaning in some of just the worst things in the world, but it gives my control back, my power back, right? So that has been one of the biggest lessons I've learned, especially as an entrepreneur.
What is the most admirable trait a person can have?
Empathy. I think having empathy and understanding others is one of the most powerful things that a human being can have. Because if you can just sit back and listen and understand another point of view, that right there is powerful, right? I mean, I don't know. I'll give you a quick story really quick. When I first started my growing on Instagram, because I knew that if I wanted to reach more people, I had to get out there on Instagram and I had to create content. And so I started creating reels every single day. I put myself up to this 30-day reels challenge. I hated it. It was the worst thing ever. I hated it. It was awful. I posted it and I'd be like, oh my gosh, please no, let me delete it. But I kept it there. And so my following started growing, and my reels started going up after a while because I was so consistent on it. And I got the meanest comments on this one Instagram reel that I posted. And for a minute, it hurt. I'm not gonna lie. It hurt me. I was like, oh my gosh, this person's so mean. But what I did instead was I changed the perspective and I put empathy onto it. And every single person that wrote a mean comment on my post, I sent them a selfie video. And I just pretty much told them, I'm here. I'm here if you need me. And 90% of those people came back with, just wanting help. It was a cry for help. So it's just perspective and things.
Amazing. And then we're going to do a lightning round for the last 3. Question number 3 is, if you had to change someone's life with one book, which book would you recommend?
I would say Think and Grow Rich.
What is the legacy that you're trying to leave behind?
Legacy that I'm trying to leave behind is I'm trying to grow more coaches, more intentional coaches to take their unique genius to leave an impact on the world. So I want to impact millions of coaches so they can go out and impact millions and billions of lives.
And for anyone that wants to embark on their walk to wealth today, what is the first step you recommend they take?
The first step that I would recommend you take is just taking note of the self-talk and the actions that you're taking every single day. Because you can't stack on things. Like you can't say, I want this, but then live consistently with the person that you've been, right? You need to become a person that you've never been. But it first starts with the words and the language that you're using every single day. So 24-hour self-talk challenge and just seeing, what am I thinking? What am I saying right now? And then go on and make those action moves in your life.
Amazing. Well, Katie, thanks again for hopping on. We definitely had an amazing conversation. And I love how we brought it full circle from when you were just a kid to where you are now, and help give points that, tips on each point of the, stage that you were at. So thanks again for hopping on and just being with us today.
Thank you.